There are 5 sentences you hear constantly. From people close to you, from people you trust, from people who smile when they say them. And every single one of them is doing damage you cannot see yet. Not the obvious damage, not the kind that arrives with a raised voice or a visible betrayal. The quiet kind. The kind that accumulates over months, over years, until one day you look at your life and realize that somewhere along the way, you stopped believing in yourself, stopped trusting your own judgment, stopped moving the way you used to move. And you cannot trace it back to a single moment because it never felt like an attack. It felt like conversation. It felt like concern. It felt like someone who cared about you telling you the truth. That is the design. That is the precision of it. Machiavelli spent his life watching people get dismantled without a single weapon being drawn. No confrontation, no battlefield. Just words delivered in the right tone, at the right moment, by the right person. And he noticed something that most people refuse to accept even now, 5 centuries later. The most effective damage is never done loudly. It is done gently, in the language of care, in the voice of someone who loves you, in sentences so reasonable, so familiar, so socially acceptable, that fighting back makes you look like the problem. I am going to show you all 5. And the 5th one is the root. The sentence that makes the other 4 land. The one that, if you can hear it for what it actually is, strips every other sentence of its power. But you need to understand the first 4 to feel why the 5th one matters so much. This is not about becoming suspicious of everyone around you. This is about becoming literate, learning to read the language beneath the language, the meaning behind the meaning, so that the next time one of these sentences arrives at your door, you are not standing there unarmed. Let us begin. The first sentence. I'm only saying this because I care about you. Stop. Before anything else follows that sentence, stop and feel what just happened. Someone attached a shield to whatever they are about to say. They pre-approved themselves. They asked you to receive what is coming not as criticism, not as an attack, not as their opinion, but as an act of love. And now anything that follows arrives, wrapped in that protection. You cannot push back against love. You cannot dismiss concern. And that is exactly why the sentence comes first. Think about the last time someone said this to you. What followed it? Was it something that expanded your confidence, something that made you feel capable and clear? Or was it a reason why what you are building probably will not work? A quiet suggestion that you are not quite ready, a concern about the path you have chosen, disguised as wisdom from someone who has been watching you. I am only saying this because I care about you. And then the thing that slows you down. Here is what Machiavelli understood that most people in your life have never been taught to see. The sentence before the sentence is always the more important one. The framing controls the reception. If someone can make you believe their motive before you hear their message, you will process the message through that belief, and your defenses will already be lowered when the real content arrives. This is not a coincidence. This is architecture. I know someone who was 2 months away from launching something they had built for 3 years. Everything was in place. The preparation was done. And then someone they trusted, someone who loved them, sat down and said those 7 words. I am only saying this because I care about you. And what followed was 45 minutes of every possible reason the launch might fail. The launch did not happen that month. or the next. The seed planted in that conversation grew into hesitation, and hesitation grew into delay, and delay grew into the quiet death of something that deserved to live. The person who said those 7 words was never held responsible. Because they cared. They said so themselves. They were just being honest. They were just looking out for you. Watch for this sentence, not with anger, with clarity. The moment someone pre-approves their own message with a declaration of love or care, ask yourself one question before a single word that follows it lands. Does this person benefit if I slow down? Does my hesitation serve them in any way? If the answer is yes, the care is real and the timing is not. If the answer is no, listen carefully. Some people who love you will say things you do not want to hear and mean every word of it. But the ones who frame the message before you hear it, the ones who need you to accept the motive before you receive the content, they are telling you something without knowing it. They are telling you the content cannot stand on its own. Real concern does not need a runway. It arrives and it lands, and it is felt, not framed. The second sentence. I'm not trying to be negative, but everything before the word but is a performance. Everything after it is the actual sentence. This is one of the oldest and most effective structures in the language of subtle destruction. The speaker distances themselves from their own message. They announce in advance that what follows is not negativity, not criticism, not opposition, and then they deliver exactly that. And you cannot call it what it is, because they already told you it was not that. They said so, right before they said it. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man conceals his intentions not through lies, but through misdirection. The person who says, I am not trying to be negative, has not lied to you. They have misdirected you. They have told you where to look, so that you do not see where the thing is actually coming from. Notice how this sentence works in practice. Someone watches you describe a plan, a decision, a direction you are moving in. Their face carries the expression of someone who has seen something you have not. And then they say it. I am not trying to be negative, but... And what follows is a careful, measured, concerned dismantling of exactly the thing you just described. The market is difficult right now. People have tried this before. I just wonder if the timing is right. I just want you to be realistic. All of it reasonable, all of it concerned, none of it negative. They said so themselves. Here is what is actually happening. Someone is disagreeing with your direction and delivering that disagreement in a format designed to bypass your resistance. Because if they said plainly, I think this is wrong, you would evaluate that claim. You would weigh it against what you know. You might push back. You might defend your position. But they did not say that. They said they are not being negative. And now you are not evaluating a disagreement. You are receiving concern. And concern is harder to argue with than disagreement. Disagreement can be answered. Concern just sits there looking worried on your behalf. I watched a man hear this sentence from 4 different people in the same week about the same decision. Not one of them said, do not do it. Every one of them said, I am not trying to be negative, but... By the end of that week, he had talked himself out of a decision that 3 months of careful thinking had produced. Not because any single person made a compelling argument, because the cumulative weight of concerned faces and measured words and sentences that started with, but eventually became heavier than his own certainty. He never traced it back to the language. He thought he had simply reconsidered. He had not reconsidered. He had been worn down, sentence by sentence, concern by concern, but by but. The next time someone says they are not trying to be negative, hear what they are actually saying. They are about to be negative, and they need you to not call it that. You can listen. You can evaluate what follows on its actual merits, but do not let the framing do their work for them. Strip the sentence before the but away entirely, and ask yourself whether what remains is something worth reconsidering for, or something worth walking away from. The third sentence. I just want you to be happy. This one is the most sophisticated of the first four because it cannot be argued with at all, not even slightly. If you push back against I just want you to be happy, you are apparently pushing back against someone's desire for your happiness. You become the ungrateful one, the one who rejects love, the one who cannot accept that someone cares. The sentence is structurally bulletproof, and that is the problem, because what follows, I just want you to be happy, is almost never a description of what would make you happy. It is a description of what would make them comfortable, what would make them less anxious, what would keep you in the version of your life that fits more neatly into their picture of how things should be. Stay closer to home. Take the safer job. Don't rock the boat. Come back to where you belong. I just want you to be happy. Machiavelli observed that the most effective chains are the ones the prisoner builds themselves, not out of cruelty, out of love. The person who says, I just want you to be happy, is often not lying. They do want you to be happy. They just cannot distinguish between your happiness and their comfort. And when those two things conflict, and they frequently do, the sentence becomes the tool that makes you choose their comfort, while believing you are choosing your own happiness. Think about a version of your own life where someone who loved you said this sentence. Think about what they were responding to, a choice you were making, a direction you were moving, a version of yourself you were becoming, something that moved you away from the familiar, away from the expected, away from what they recognized, and they said it. I just want you to be happy. What happened next? Did you examine whether the path you were on was actually making you unhappy? Or did the sentence itself create a doubt that was not there before? Did you start to wonder whether this ambition was really happiness or just restlessness? Whether this direction was really right for you or just exciting in the way that wrong things can sometimes feel exciting? The sentence plants a question, and the question is always the same one dressed in different clothes. Are you sure this is what you really want? Which is a reasonable question in isolation, a question worth sitting with. But when it arrives wrapped in someone else's love for you, delivered in the tone of concern, it does not arrive as a question. It arrives as a suggestion. The suggestion that maybe you do not actually know what you want, that maybe they can see something you cannot. Real love does not need you to be the version of yourself that is easiest to love. Real love accommodates your growth even when that growth is uncomfortable to watch. When someone says, I just want you to be happy, ask yourself one question before you absorb it. Do they want you to be happy, or do they want you to be recognizable? The fourth sentence. I've known you your whole life, so I'm telling you this for your own good. History as authority, longevity as license, duration as expertise. This sentence takes the length of a relationship and converts it into the right to define your limits. The longer they have known you, the more weight their verdict carries. The more time they have invested, the less you are allowed to outgrow their version of you. I have known you your whole life. Translation: I have a fixed image of who you are, and I am protecting that image from the disruption of who you are becoming, for your own good. Translation: I have decided what is good for you, and I am delivering it with the authority of someone who has earned that right. Machiavelli wrote that men are defined less by what they have done than by what others remember them doing. The person who has known you your whole life is not seeing you. They are seeing their memory of you. The version of you that existed at every point they knew you, averaged out, compiled, and held in place. And that version, however complete it feels to them, is not current. It is an archive, and they are using that archive to assess your present and your future. Think about the people who have known you longest. Think about their picture of you. Does it include the person you have become in the last 3 years? Does it account for what you have built, what you have learned, what you have survived, who you decided to be on the other side of difficulty? Or does it still contain the 17-year-old, the 22-year-old, the person who made the mistakes they watched you make and never quite recovered from in their estimation? The sentence weaponizes intimacy. It says, because I have been closest to you for the longest time, I have the clearest view of your limitations. And because I am telling you this for your own good, you should receive it as a gift. I know someone who was told by a parent with full sincerity and full love that they had never been good with follow-through, that this new direction was just another thing that would fizzle, that they knew them better than they knew themselves, and the parent was not malicious. The parent was right about the person they had watched for 20 years. They were simply looking at the wrong person. The one who used to live in that body had become someone else. But the parent had not been notified. History does not grant vision, it grants memory. And memory is not the same thing as sight. The next time someone invokes how long they have known you as the basis for their authority over your choices, hear what they are not saying. They are not saying, I see you clearly. They are saying, I see you consistently with how I have always seen you, and that consistency is their limitation, not your identity. You are allowed to outgrow every version of yourself that anyone else was introduced to, including the people who loved those earlier versions most. Midpoint reveal. 4 sentences, 4 different mechanisms, 4 different ways the same damage gets delivered in the language of love, of honesty, of care, of history. But I told you at the beginning that the 5th sentence is the root, the one that makes the other 4 land with full force, the one that, without it, the first 4 would roll off you like water. Because here is the truth about all 4 of those sentences. On their own, they are manageable. On their own, you could hear them and weigh them and decide what to do with them. You could receive them as opinions, as perspectives, as imperfect expressions of concern from imperfect people. They only become truly destructive when combined with the 5th sentence. when the fifth sentence has already been delivered, when the fifth sentence has already done its work inside you. And the fifth sentence did not arrive recently. It arrived years ago. It may have been arriving your entire life, quietly, consistently, from the mouths of people who were not even aware they were saying it. Here it is. The fifth sentence, the root. You're too sensitive. That is it. That is the root of all of it. Not because it sounds dangerous, it does not. It sounds like feedback. It sounds like someone helping you develop thicker skin. It sounds like a person trying to prepare you for a world that does not accommodate feelings. But here is what that sentence actually does every single time it is said to you. It teaches you not to trust your own reactions, not to trust the feeling that something is wrong when something feels wrong, not to trust the instinct that a sentence was designed to wound rather than to help, not to trust your perception of what is happening in a room, in a conversation, in a relationship, because you are too sensitive. Your reading of the situation is excessive. Your response is disproportionate. Your feelings are the problem, not the thing that produced them. Machiavelli wrote that the greatest conquest is not over an enemy's army, but over an enemy's confidence in their own judgment. A man who does not trust his own perception is a man who must outsource that perception to whoever is willing to provide it. And the person who tells you that you are too sensitive has just appointed themselves that provider. Think about how many times you heard this sentence growing up, from a parent, a teacher, a sibling, a friend, a partner. Think about what you were responding to when they said it. You were upset about something, you were hurt by something, you were uncomfortable with something that was being done or said. And instead of the thing you were responding to being examined, you were examined. You were found to be the problem. Too sensitive, too emotional, too reactive, too much. And over time, every single time you heard it, something happened inside you. A recalibration, a quiet adjustment of the baseline. You stopped trusting the first signal. You started asking yourself before you reacted whether you were overreacting. You began auditing your own feelings through the lens of whoever had told you they were excessive. And that audit, that constant second-guessing of your own internal experience, that is what makes every other sentence on this list work. When someone says, "I am only saying this because I care about you," the person who trusts their own perception hears the framing and notices what it is doing. But the person who has been told for years that their perception is too sensitive, that person hears it and wonders if maybe they are wrong to feel suspicious. Maybe they are reading too much into it. Maybe it really is just care. When someone says, "I am not trying to be negative," but the person who trusts their instincts hears the misdirection. But the person who has been told their instincts are excessive absorbs the negative content and then apologizes internally for noticing it. When someone says, "I just want you to be happy," the person who knows their own mind can evaluate that claim against what they actually know about the relationship. But the person whose self-knowledge has been repeatedly undermined starts to wonder if they really do know what makes them happy. Maybe this person can see something they cannot. When someone invokes how long they have known you as authority over your limits, the person with intact self-trust can hear the difference between memory and vision. But the person who has been taught not to trust their own experience of themselves, that person starts to wonder whether the archive has a point. "You are too sensitive" is not one sentence. It is an ongoing deletion of the most important tool you have, the ability to read what is actually happening around you and trust that reading enough to act on it. Machiavelli wrote that the man who cannot interpret events as they are will always be managed by those who can. The sentence "you are too sensitive" is how you get taught to misread events, to interpret your own clarity as distortion, to mistake accurate perception for excessive emotion. And the people who say it most frequently are the ones who benefit most when you do not trust yourself. Because the moment you stop trusting yourself, you start looking outward for confirmation. And whoever is positioned to provide that confirmation becomes the person who governs your reality. Think right now about the person in your life who has said this to you most. Think about the context in which they said it. What were you responding to? What had you seen, felt, or understood about what was happening around you? And was the thing you were responding to actually examined? Or were you the only thing examined? Was the situation addressed? Or were you adjusted? In almost every case, it was the second. The situation was not the problem. You were the problem. Not too aggressive, not too absent, too sensitive. The solution was never to change the thing you were responding to. The solution was always to change how much you trusted your response. Stop changing your response. Start trusting it again. The connection. Now look at all five together. I am only saying this because I care about you. Pre-approves the damage, so you cannot defend against it. I am not trying to be negative, but delivers criticism inside a denial of criticism, so you cannot name it. I just want you to be happy. Replaces your definition of your happiness with their definition of their comfort. I have known you your whole life, so I am telling you this for your own good. Uses the length of their memory as authority over the direction of your future. And underneath all four of them, making all four of them possible, doing the quiet preparatory work that ensures each one lands. You are too sensitive, because once you have been told enough times that your perception is excessive, you stop trusting it. And the moment you stop trusting your own perception, every sentence on this list walks straight through the door that doubt opened. You do not push back against pre-approved concern because you wonder if you are reading it wrong. You absorb criticism disguised as non-negativity because maybe you are overreacting to the framing. You accept someone else's definition of your happiness because perhaps they can see what you cannot. You allow the archive of your past self to define your future self because your instinct that you have changed feels too uncertain to insist upon. All four sentences, one root, one hole in the foundation that everything else falls through. Now look at your life with all five in mind. Who around you consistently says things that require pre-approval before the content arrives? Who delivers their opposition in sentences that start with "not trying to be negative"? Who invokes their love for you right before redirecting your path back toward what is familiar to them? Who uses the length of time they have known you as the basis for their authority over what you are capable of? And who, when you noticed any of these things and said so, told you that you were too sensitive? Answer those questions honestly, not with anger, with clarity. Because the answers will show you not just who has been using these sentences, but how long the work has been running and how much of your own self-trust has been quietly borrowed from you in the process. The close. Machiavelli spent his life in rooms where words were the weapons and sentences were the strategies. He watched brilliant people hand over their power, not in battles, not in negotiations that felt like confrontations, but in ordinary conversations that felt like care. And the single clearest pattern he identified was this: the people who fall are never the ones who get overpowered. They are the ones who get told, often enough and gently enough, and by people they trust enough, that their reading of the room is wrong, that their instincts are excessive, that their perception is the problem rather than the thing their perception is accurately seeing. Once that seed is planted, once self-trust starts to erode, every sentence on this list finds the opening it needs. 5 centuries later, the sentences have changed their clothes. The delivery is warmer, the language is more modern, the tone is more therapeutic, but the function is identical. Borrow someone's trust in themselves and you never need to argue with them again. They will argue themselves into the corner you need them in. The protection is not suspicion. It is not distance. It is not a wall you build between yourself and the people who love you. The protection is this: restore your trust in your own perception. When something feels designed to disarm you before the content arrives, trust that feeling. When something feels like criticism wearing the costume of concern, trust that reading. When something feels like someone else's comfort being described as your happiness, trust what you know about the difference. When someone's memory of who you were is being used as a ceiling on who you are becoming, trust the version of yourself that is living in the present. And when someone tells you that you are too sensitive, hear what they are actually saying. They are saying your perception is inconvenient, and an inconvenient perception is usually an accurate one. Trust it, protect it. Do not let anyone borrow it from you again with 5 sentences that sound like love and function like a slow, quiet dismantling of the person you were building toward. In the weeks ahead, something will shift in your conversations. You will hear the architecture beneath the language. You will feel the framing before the content. You will notice the root sentence doing its preparatory work. And you will stand there, not with suspicion, not with coldness, but with the quiet solidity of someone who has learned to read what is actually being said. That solidity changes everything, not dramatically, not visibly, but permanently. Because the person who trusts their own perception is the person nobody can speak out of position. Tell me in the comments if something in here did not sit right when you first heard it and then became true the longer you held it. Right. I trust what I see. Let me see how many people are done letting 5 sentences decide what they are allowed to become. And do not stop here. The next video goes deeper into the specific ways language is used to manage you in rooms where power is being decided, and what Machiavelli said about the man who learns to hear what is not being said. It is more important than you think. See you there.